From the Cactus KCTS FM Phoenix, I'm Jamison Greenwood with Greenwood and Company. Well, I hope everybody's been having a good week. We're already in November. Veterans Day is going to be coming up here pretty soon, and Thanksgiving will be here before we know it. I would say knowing what is relevant, like Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, that's mark of a good radio host, and it's also the mark of a good journalist. You know, I did dabble in journalism a bit when I was in college. So we always had to ask relevant questions of people that we were talking to, but one of my colleagues, he was a returning student, older guy, his name was Bill, and I was helping to mentor him. He had a little bit of a different idea of just what relevant questions actually are. In the course of my life, one strange observation I have made of the human race is despite all of us being children at some point in our lives, many adults do not trust independent thinking in children. It may be a fear of rejecting religion, politics, or football teams, or perhaps that the children will disown their parents when they discover that they were lied to about Santa Claus and people who root for the Pittsburgh Steelers as opposed to the Philadelphia Giants. Or are they the Green Bay Giants? I don't know. This fear of independent thought can manifest itself in many ways and usually results in behaviors such as book banning or refusal to let children converse with certain relatives or hang out with friends who either don't belong to the right church, synagogue, or mosque, or if they consider religion the root of all evil, any organization questioning atheist orthodoxy. Even if, like Walt Disney, we are opinionated to the point of stubbornness when our minds are made up, it behooves us to be good listeners of arguments we disagree with, especially among journalists. I always strove, when I was reporting for the radio station at High Country University, to ensure my opinion never crept into my stories, and tried to pass this on to Bill Kelsey, a returning student who had just joined the paper when we were both assigned to cover book challenges in the Pinebough Unified School District. "Don't you think they're trying to censor what the kids are reading?" Bill asked. "Just listen to what they have to say," I told him. "They will always have something to tell you." So I shouldn't ask, "Are you against free speech?" No, that's too charged. If you want them to trust us, you have to be trusting toward them. That question's going to shut down any meaningful conversation. So just ask relevant questions, Bill asked of me. "Yes," I replied. "So just ask relevant questions," Bill said. "Yes," I replied. Though, as I was to learn, the phrase relevant questions was not as relevant as I had thought. We then drove to the district office, which was a small stone building that was previously the Snow Fox Lodge before they got too big and took over the old Pinebough Baptist Church, which got too big and moved to the bigger church in the north side of town where they are today. Because the building had a rough history as a fraternal lodge, the school board was near some unexpected businesses, including the 12-Point Buck Saloon, a gun shop, and a knife store called Ivan's Cutlery, though, like the gun store, they sold more weaponry than flatware for candlelight suppers. When Bill and I arrived at the school board office, there were a number of protesters and counter-protesters demonstrating outside. Those in favor of the book bans held signs which read, "Don't make our kids grow up too fast. Stop wasting money on useless books," and "We support sensible reading materials." The counter-protesters held signs with the text of the First Amendment, support free speech, along with some signs evoking witchcraft, a common target of book challenges. Signs read, "Hufflepuffs for free expression," "Muggles against censorship," and "I am Harvey Kinkle." You know, when I was in my single-digit years, I often wished that I was Harvey Kinkle, riding a magic broomstick with Sabrina, holding her hand. Never mind. Oh, I sure hope Annabelle didn't hear that. Anyhow, I encouraged Bill to talk to the protesters, but he felt too shy about it, and I found that most of them were too busy to talk to us anyway, so we entered the hearing room to observe the meeting. There were 100 or so folding chairs set up for spectators, so Bill and I took our seats in the front row marked for the press. Also nearby were Jim Ledecky of the NPR station, Martha Walton of the Pinebough Gazette-Dispatch, and Thaddeus Lyon, an eccentric magazine reporter who always wore a plaid suit. Soon after, the board entered from the back, and the chairman, Mr. Ben Schumer, called the meeting to order. We stood to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and he came to the first agenda item, a request that we purchase new LED light fixtures to replace the fluorescent fixtures in the Pinebough High School cafeteria. After some discussion, several protesters asked various questions about the costs and benefits, and Bill finally worked up enough sweat to ask a surprising question. Do you have any history of high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, or cancer in your immediate family? Mr. Schumer gave an honest, albeit awkward, answer. I am diabetic. My father died of cancer, but I have no heart disease or high blood pressure. After some further back and forth regarding the LEDs, the board voted unanimously to approve them, then moved on to the next issue, modifying math curriculum to include a new lesson on bell curves and z-scores for kindergartners. After some dialogue describing how impractical this would be without first teaching Algebra 1 and 2, let alone basic addition and subtraction, Mr. Schumer opened the floor for questions again. Then he called on Bill. Are you currently nursing, pregnant, or planning to become pregnant? Bill asked. Mr. Schumer, who must have had a paralyzing fear of seeming unkind, gave another honest answer. No, well, I don't have the necessary components to become pregnant, or to nurse. The board discussed several other issues of less importance to most of the audience, such as whether to change vendors for playground sand, whether to fix or replace 2 mechanically persnickety buses, and whether to order the public present to take a nap while the board conducted more boring administrative business. Soon, though, the issue of whether or not to remove 5 specific books from the school libraries came up, and Mr. Schumer reviewed the arguments for or against this issue, then asked for public comment. Which we will hold off on because we have to take a short break, but we will hear from both sides when we come back. You're listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. Is the hustle and bustle of food shopping for this Thanksgiving making you a little less thankful? That's where Giggett's Supermarket, your ultimate subpar food store, comes in. If you want to pay top dollar for a not very meaty Thanksgiving turkey, look no further. Full turkeys available now for only $75. One turkey not enough for your family? For just $25, get an assortment of gizzards, kidneys, liver, and other giblets. Perfect for those unexpected overnight guests. If you're lucky, they won't contain anus. And for all your side dishes, 12-ounce cans of green beans, corn, and carrots are 3 for $10. They're a decade old, but if you're lucky, they'll still look like the food they're labeled as. All these Thanksgiving deals are available at Giggett's Supermarkets, your resource for Thanksgiving staples and all your subpar grocery needs. Drop by your local Giggett's Supermarket today. And welcome back. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on the Cactus, KCTS. Now, before the break, we mentioned that we were just about to hear public comment on the proposed book bans in the Pinebough Public Schools. The first person to speak was a member of the counter-protesters, the one who had a sign reading Muggles Against Censorship. She reiterated that any attempts to ban books could descend into a slippery slope that would cause free speech and trust in our institutions and each other to deteriorate. Then, an advocate for the bans, a woman named Stacy Lynn, took the podium to begin her commentary. She wore a red blouse with a heart-shaped necklace and had her dark chocolate hair in a ponytail. She met the stereotype of suburban housewife of the 2000s, showing up to the meeting in black leggings and purple Nikes. I expected the usual desires to protect our children and to have a choice over what my children are reading, but then her argument began. Chairman Schumer, members of the board, fellow students, parents, and media representatives. I am an accountant, so I do not read very much other than balance sheets and income statements, but when I read, I enjoy doing so with my children. Then my middle school daughter, Caitlin, brought home this book. She held up a copy of Lord of the Flies by William Golding. My daughter is like most teenagers, glad to be close to adulthood, taking an interest in adult concepts, happy to be discovering as she should be. Caitlin came to me holding this book, Lord of the Flies, and sobbing. I had never read it, but I figured it couldn't be that bad. So I decided I would read it with her. I've missed reading to my children. I opened this book, and by the time I reached the end of the first page, I was terrified, because I couldn't remember what had happened at the beginning. So I read the next page, a chapter, 5 chapters. The writing was so long-winded and so boring that my daughter and I had no idea what was going on, and we felt so bored I can hardly describe it. So I did a survey of so many of the books our children are reading. The Great Gatsby, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Crime and Punishment. She increasingly got more and more emotional. Fellow parents and school board members, as an accountant, I think on the note of Dostoevsky that it is an absolute crime that our district is wasting money on books that are so boring and no child or sane adult will ever want to read. I don't care about sex. I don't care about politics. Just please, stop wasting money on boring books. Thank you. A few people in the audience applauded, but most of us, especially in the press section, were wondering, what the heck just happened? Chairman Schumer called for more questions, then Bill made the previous passionate speech seem like a mere footnote. Addressing the chairman, he asked, "Have you recently gone through menopause or had a hysterectomy?" Mr. Schumer, who up until this point seemed bored with all the proceedings, didn't quite snap, but took a cue from the Greek philosopher Socrates. "I know you are a journalist, but what does that have anything to do with what we are discussing?" "I was told to ask all the relevant questions," Bill replied. "How does my health history have anything to do with all this business on the school board?" Mr. Schumer wondered. "I was a gynecologist before I went back to school." "Those are all relevant questions," Bill insisted. Mr. Schumer rolled his eyes and called for a vote. The board voted unanimously not to ban the books, but due to the reasons put forth by Stacy Lynn, some of the protesters both for and against the bans actually began having decent conversation and even nods of agreement with each other. "You can probably learn more from Harry Potter than Lord of the Rings," a person who was advocating the bans said to the guy who held the "I am Harvey Kinkle" sign. "I didn't learn anything from Lord of the Flies," the Kinkle guy told him, "other than how to write boring." After the meeting, Bill and I went back to the communications building at HCU, typed up our story, and filed it into the computer system for the editors to review. I tried to coach Bill in some other relevant questions, but when he began asking me about my health history, I knew this effort was a Pickett's charge. Our story covered a wide spectrum of viewpoints on the book bans, though Bill's mentions about Mr. Schumer's diabetes were removed at the editing stage. But the real subject in most of the Pinebough media landscape turned out to be Bill himself. Thaddeus Lyon wrote a skewering criticism of Bill's questions in the Pinebough magazine, and uncovered that his medical license had been revoked for incompetence as he tried to prescribe an IUD to a man. However, his harshest words came for Stacy Lynn, whom he said was no doubt a product of a suburban mother's glued to reality TV culture that had no appreciation for good literature, and even questioning whether she knew how to read. I'm just glad my name was nowhere among the talk of the town, and also that I was able to get away with spark notes on Lord of the Flies my sophomore year. You are listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS. If you're ready for a delicious meal after work, but don't have energy to cook or money for takeout, consider Fitzgerald Faulkner frozen dinners. They're inexpensive, ready in 5 minutes, and the photos on the box at least look just like what Mom used to make. Our fried chicken's got that crunchy golden brown breading, even though it tastes like dead grass. Our grilled salmon and asparagus have that familiar fishy smell and even fishier taste. And our spaghetti and meatballs are authentically Italian, even though the marinara sauce is thickened with orange paint. Fitzgerald Faulkner frozen dinners. They've got the literary grandeur that English majors can actually afford. Available at Giggett supermarkets and other subpar retailers. Support for Greenwood and Company and the Cactus KCTS comes from the Society for Cats with Mathematics Test Anxiety, the Save the Floppy Disks Foundation, and the Shag Carpet Preservation Fund. Well, I wanted to take a look, as I think about all the books that we read in school. You know, there's so many variations between them, although a lot of them tend to be very bleak, I've noticed, but there is a very specific thing I have noticed is that some books that we read in school and for pleasure are extremely thin, while others are extremely thick, and they can take what seems like an eternity to get through, but you feel such a sense of accomplishment with them, and there's benefits to risks, and I can't figure out where I stand, so I decided to consider that in a poem, which I call Thin Books and Thick Books. Sparing in their use of words, short books still pack much wisdom, like Paul's epistles, children's novels, or the haikus on serene Japanese landscapes. Yet like layers of oil painted on a canvas over weeks and months, the long books bring a beauty only found once, read from cover to cover. The Gospels and Genesis tying everything between them together to Revelation. The details of Dickens making you and Oliver Twist old friends, completing the puzzle of his backstory. Harder thousand-piece puzzles come through the wizarding world of Hogwarts or the Lord of the Rings, or Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, or the puzzle of selfish human depravity in Atlas Shrugged. Constant accomplishment comes from finishing short books, but so too does constant shopping for new ones, making friends and foes with new sets of characters every 2 weeks. The problem of short-term relationships disappears in thick books, yet seeing the bookmark move only a few millimeters each day in the top 3-inch spine piled on top of 3 more makes reading like scaling Everest. Though they're large, you may read less than 10 per year. Brief words and sentences, chapters only a few pages create frequent wins when writing, leading to more chapters or an entire book. Multiple books to send for publication, though too simple they seem. Sometimes, instead of a fast-paced plot, you feel called to dive deeper, the depths of your character's ocean, their past, present, hopes, their dreams and nightmares, clothes in their closet or food in their pantry, treasured drawing by their toddler selves that remain in the drawers with their worn security blankets. Some like the short and some like the long, but just as yin and yang, we need both kinds. Long books for bits of wisdom, short books for escape, though both remain indispensable to building and enhancing the beauty of language. That brings an end to this week's Greenwood and Company. Our show was created and hosted by yours truly and was written by him along with James Salison and Minnesota Martinez. The engineer is Ivan Crosby. Jonas Andrews answers the phones even though we don't take calls on this program. The theme was composed by Martin Landstrom, and our costumes are provided by Grandma's Garage Thrift Shop. All the characters, settings, and situations depicted in this program, along with all advertised products, are entirely fictional, and any similarities to products, events, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Also, KCTS is not an actual radio station. Be sure to visit our website at JamisonGreenwoodPodcast.com to learn more about Greenwood and Company, and make sure to follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and share with your friends on social media. Just a reminder to please be careful if you are going out on the 101, the 17, or Route 66 tonight. I'm Jamison Greenwood, and until we meet again, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay young at heart. Good night. This is KCTS FM Phoenix. Stay tuned for Lacking in Substance.